And also it has to do, about whether you were encouraged or cowed when you express your wishes and boundaries as a kid, where you listen to, like, how did you learn to express yourself, and what you liked and disliked and so on, So this is a long path, and it's time to maybe take the power back there and to relearn and to rewrite some of these rules.
Welcome to yourbrilliance.com. I'm your host, Amy Waterman. Have you ever had a real conversation about sex with your partner? And not just like that sexy, flirtatious kind, but the kind where you sit down and you really talk about what's going on for you. Like all the embarrassing stuff, even the stuff that maybe you don't want him to know. It feels like sexuality is such a private matter. It's like you can do it, but just don't talk about it. Well, our guest for today, Kjersti Helgeland, disagrees. She thinks that we have to talk about sex, and not just with our partners either. For Kjersti, sexuality is a public matter, and she's bringing that message to organizations through her Sustainable Sexuality Initiative. Because if we don't talk about sex, then we don't question what we've been told about sex. And it's time to take back our power. Welcome, Kjersti. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Hi, Amy. It's such a pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you.
So we have to start with a big question. Why did you start talking about sex?
Well, so that was like a twofold thing. One thing was, when I started to be more conscious about my own sexuality, and I started to explore my own sexuality. So then I also wanted to start to talk about it. Inspired by others. When I took courses, I did some tantra, and also I want to share, my new knowledge and what I learned and stuff. And I noticed how people responded, that so many people came up and they also opened up and wanted to talk about sexuality. They came with their thoughts, questions maybe, or just like were curious, wanted to just hear a normal person talking about sexuality. So, and also, of course, it did impact my sex life, when I could express myself more. And I realized I never talked truly about sexuality before. I mean, of course, yes, some, but not really deep.
That is so interesting, because I think there's two ways that we could talk about sex. One way is that like fun, lighthearted banter with girlfriends, kind of like Sex in the City, where we talk about sex to show how liberated we are. But then the other kind is that intimate one-on-one conversation with a partner where you actually say, this feels good. Could you change that? Let's do something different. And that's where we seem to clam up. So why is that?
Well, I think there is a lot that lies in your childhood when you grow up, because when we grow up, we learn what is okay to talk about and what is not okay to talk about, and who can we talk about it and how can we talk about it. And most of us, we never had any good role models when it came to talking about sexuality in a, like a normal, relaxed, informed way, So, in a constructive way. So, and maybe we even experience someone getting teased or ridiculed trying to talk about sexuality, opening up the theme. So unconsciously we learn certain rules, how it's okay to talk about sex, or maybe mostly how it's not okay to talk about sex. And like, we learn the lighthearted, or we learn to brag, and we bring these rules with us throughout our life if we don't question them.
That makes so much sense. I was just thinking, because we learn to talk about sex with our girlfriends from the media, because we see people in movies talk about sex, and maybe we hear about talking about sex in sex ed, which is a very clinical kind of talking about sex, but no one puts a microphone into the intimate one-on-one conversations with a partner and shows us how real people in the privacy of their own bedroom are talking to each other.
Exactly. And also it has to do, about whether you were encouraged or cowed when you express your wishes and boundaries as a kid, where you listen to, like, how did you learn to express yourself, and and what you liked and disliked and so on, you know. So this is a long path, and it's time to maybe take the power back there and to relearn and to rewrite some of these rules.
That is really, I find that so powerful, because it's true that talking about sex actually starts with talking about our bodies and consent and physical boundaries as kids. So it's so far back. And now we fast forward and we haven't had that experience talk about sex. And so we have a partner and we try to talk in the bedroom. But on the one hand, if we give him any instructions, do this, do that, I don't like that, sometimes men actually get quite offended. They feel like, you know, they should be in charge. They're the one, you know, who gets to decide what to do. And then on the other hand, we see things like Cosmo, where we're supposed to follow these scripts given to us by somebody else. And in the process, we just lose, I think, our agency. So how do we untangle that and actually start to feel free to talk about sex during sex in a way that feels good and communicates well?
You know, I think the clue here is that you actually to take responsibility for your own sexuality and your own pleasure. And that is like, it's a mindset, you know, that, okay, I want to take responsibility. Maybe I have given it away. Maybe I have been unconscious, but now it's time to, to foster, to find and to grow that, to take responsibility, you know, and not leave it to the man or leave it to someone else. And it takes courage and it takes practice. And first, what you need is actually you need words, you know, because as you say, when we grow up, when the only thing we learned maybe was in school or our parents didn't talk about much. So we need a language, you know, you need to have what you call your genitals. You know, do you have a name for your genitals? Do you have something that you feel comfortable with talking about? And maybe, you know, it's not the same when you talk with a partner or you talk with your kids or if you talk with your doctor, you know, but you need to have words that you can actually say. Maybe you have to practice in front of the mirror, and you have to also have names for the things you do and the things you like, you know, for sexual actions. So that's the first thing. You need some language. But I say that, I mean, the best is, of course, if you can start in the beginning, like very early in a relationship, to kind of set it out in the right direction. And, you know, my partner said something to me the other day that I thought I hadn't thought about, and I think it was very nice, because when I met him, and after like the second date, I thought, wow, this might be something, you know, special, huh? And then I was like very clear. I had a sex talk with him, you know, like I wanted to say what was important to me. I wanted to share some of my history. I wanted to be quite brutally honest with him. Do you, how do you say, do you handle me? You know, can you take all of me? You know, and he said, you know, felt like I was quite brutally honest with him. And that was quite a gift, because that means, of course, he can be very honest back. So I never thought of that. That actually is a gift. And we should remember this. Being honest, yes, it might feel hard and it might be scary and everything, you know, but think of it as a gift you give. You are honest, and then you need to open the door for others and your partner to be honest as well. You know, so this is something to, I think, to have in mind. And then, of course, you know, talk about what is important to you, what you like and dislike, what you're insecure about and what you're curious about. So just to start and talk very early on, I think that's the best, if you can come in there, you know, start a pattern, opening up the theme.
So do you think that you should have the sex talk before you actually have sex?
Like in a perfect world, I think that would be the best, yes. But we know that doesn't always happen. But if you can like open up the theme before you have sex, you know, of just asking, you know, what do you like? How do you like to be touched? You know, and then selling for yourself. and not assume that you know what he or she wants, or that they should read your mind. So, and also you can say something, like some men believe that they should be able to guess what a woman wants, but what I like, it differs from day to day. I can't expect you to read my mind. So we need to talk about it, and so it's it can be felt like as a gift for him, and lower the threshold, is I don't expect you to read my mind. I take responsibility for my pleasure. So that's why I'm telling you, how I feel today, what I need today. And I also ask you as my partner, where are you today? What's your needs and wishes and your boundaries today? So this is a way to get it started, just opening up. And this is not about you doing something wrong. This is about me taking responsibility and not thinking that you should read my mind. But I have, of course, there's other rules as well, okay, or other guidelines, I could say, So when you start opening up the theme, talk about what they do right, yeah? Talk about what you like, and even the more better is, show what you like there and then. Show with sounds. You don't need to talk, but you can with sounds, with body language, so be expressive. So actually it's possible to understand what you like and not. And be concrete, talk about what happened, what they did, or what didn't happen. And not about, how they are, or more abstract words. And this is also about empowering them to be concrete, not just, I didn't quite like what you did, the other day. It doesn't say anything. You have to give, what do you want instead? What is your wish then, And another good thing is if you can introduce, the sex talk afterwards, after you had sex, How did that feel for you when I did that, or when you did that? How did that feel, Because, and that's amazing, I think, when you do, because it's sure that you and I, you and your partner, you do experience things differently. And it's really interesting, I think, to talk with your partner. And you can do another thing as well that can be quite fun. You can talk to the genitals. You can ask, the pussy or the cock, how did you experience when this happened? And that can kind of make it a bit more fun. Then you take it a bit down, it's like, that's a way of having that conversation as well. And don't micromanage, there in the bed. Don't say everything you want your partner to do and how hard you need to have some trust. Otherwise, it's quite exhausting to be with a partner who's micromanaging you. And if there are any bigger things, issues you held back, for a long time, maybe don't just burst out. Make an appointment, say, you heard Amy's podcast, and then you come to think about something. Could we maybe have a talk tomorrow after supper or something, And when you then start, take one thing at a time. Don't burst out with everything that you collected for all the years of frustrations and stuff, One thing, and that's it. And then maybe you can continue next week. You have to build up kind of the trust and the ability and the just practice to do it. And be curious with your partner, as you want your partner to be curious about you and to really feel into how are you and how do you like things. Then you have to be curious back as well, because some people say, like men's sexuality, it's so easy, it's so uncomplicated. No, it's not.
So one thing I am mystified by is that you bring this conversation not just to individuals or in private settings. You talk about sex at work, in companies and organizations. I just can't imagine how that works. How does that work when you bring this message out in a very public way?
Well, it's, I differ what I talk about to whom I'm talking with. But my aim is really to create a greater awareness on how our sexuality is formed and manipulated by society. At first, you know, it's our parents, it's our friends, it's in school, politics, the laws influence our sexuality, religion, culture, media, and porn. You know, you have those who think that they know what is best for you and they want to lead you in the right direction. Or you have those who want to make money on your sexuality, whether it's your horniness or your insecurity. So you can say that, you know, I like to use this metaphor of a map, that when you grow up, the kind of society and culture and parents and everything, they create a map on your sexuality, telling, you know, where it's okay to go, with whom, and what to do, and so and so, and you know, what are taboos, and what should you avoid, and everything. And then what happens if your map does not really fit with your terrain, your unique sexuality? Do you then try to adapt yourself to the map, or do you try to rewrite the map? You know, and I think many young people today, they really try to change themselves to fit the map that they think they should fit, which is not a very good idea. So, you know, you are influenced by society and you influence back. You influence your partner, of course, also your kids, your friends, in school, at work, and especially if you work with, you know, other people in any way, like in the pedagogics, or if you're in the health sector or anything, you influence, you know, like there's in Europe, and I guess it's the same in US, you know, that so many doctors and people in the healthcare system, they don't talk about sexuality even when they should, because they feel ashamed as well, you know, and people then who are dependent on other people, like living in institutions and stuff. So this affects their sexuality in a much greater way than it does for maybe people outside. So you influence also. That's why I say that, you know, your sexuality isn't just a private matter. It is actually a public matter. How you talk about sex, who you talk with, and what you talk about, it does you're part of creating society's view on sexuality. So I want to inspire to take responsibility for your sexuality and also be conscious on how you influence others, because, you know, you do. It's not like my mom's old friend, she asked me, you know, what I do. It was my mother's 80th, and I talked with Karen, she's 79, and she said, you know, well, I've never influenced anyone because I never talked about sex. And it's so easy, you know, we can kind of laugh at it. She has 2 kids, by the way, you know, but so many think like that.
Yeah.
If I don't say anything, I don't influence. Yeah.
So you actually bring this conversation out even further. You host a festival on positive sexuality. You've got Passion Cafés. What are Passion Cafés?
It's, you know, both the festival and the Passion Cafés are about creating an arena for like ordinary people who wants to learn some more about sexuality, to get this, you know, new impact. So it's talks and sometimes lectures on mostly any theme around sexuality. And the Passion Cafés is really for people to experience normal people, and also, of course, professionals, but talking about sexuality and talking about the intimate things that we usually don't hear. And people are so much appreciated, you know, there really is so much good response of people coming and saying, you know, like, wow, hearing someone talking so openly about sexuality, talking about experiences and being concrete, it help you to mirror yourself and your own sexuality, and help you feel more confident with yourself, you know, because usually we sit with the same questions, you and I, you know, and the same insecurities, but we don't know because we don't talk about it.
So for those of you watching, if you want to learn more about sustainable sexuality and the Passion Cafés and all of that, we have a link for you. Just go to yourbrilliance.org/talk about it. That's yourbrilliance.org/talk about it. Thank you so much, Kjersti, for coming onto the show. And I wondered if you had any last message you would like to leave our viewers with.
Well, I was thinking maybe I should leave you with a challenge, like in the next week to come, that you try and talk about sexuality or sex in a way that you feel is right for you, with someone that you maybe haven't talked about the issue before, or, open up a new conversation, being a little bit outside your comfort zone. I mean, not too much, but just try something new, challenge yourself a little bit, talk about sexuality.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you out there for watching. Now, did you have any aha moments or insights while watching this interview? If so, let us know what resonated with you in the comments. For more interviews like these, subscribe to Your Brilliance here on YouTube, and then come and check us out at yourbrilliance.com for more tips and insights on how to live your most brilliant life. See you next time.